Alright, so I have my setup here to check continuity on this little switch here. Basically what I have is this little multimeter here. I'm going to turn that on, turn this guy on, and I have positive end of this to the battery and the negative to one end of the switch, the other end of the switch to the negative on the multimeter. What that's going to do is if I connect this to that, that's going to jump up to about 12 volts right there. So that's the 12 volts coming from this battery here. Because I have this in this circuit here, in theory when I press this button, that should jump up to 12. Basically this closes the circuit here. And it does. This is a good switch. So I am gonna go ahead and get this installed on my column there. First I have to take off the old one. It's kind of just dangling there. But yeah, I'm gonna wire this up. I had already gotten this taken apart a few times before, so I already know what to expect back there. But just for filming purposes, I'm gonna show you what it looks like behind there. So there's these two screws up here, one at the top and one down here. These are really small. They're tiny, so don't lose these. There's supposed to be this pin that goes right over the shaft to keep this spring in place. So if this is going to be your first time taking it apart, you'll know you just need to put a pick here and just pry it out. Get the spring out. And then below that spring, there's also like this metal piece. This goes right underneath the spring. And then I've already removed them, but this rubber piece here goes up top, and then these two bolts go underneath here to keep this shaft in place. So I'm just gonna pull it off just a little bit. Careful not to pull any of the wiring in the back. Obviously you're gonna wanna have the battery disconnected so you don't short anything out. Yeah. Okay, I don't know how well you can see that, but as I was pulling this out, I was hoping to get this entire shaft right here pulled out, because it's basically just resting in that hole there. Forgot I had loosened this. There's a bolt that goes right here. I had loosened that, so this is actually removable from this one here. There you go. Kind of move that out of the way. And then there's one screw right here in the middle. This piece comes out. You can see this right here. This is the ground wire from the switch here. But if I follow this all the way through here, these red connections here, they had already been cut as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna splice this into the line here. I won't feel as bad because it's already been cut. As much as I hate cutting into original wiring, I'm just gonna have to do it unless I take this whole thing apart here. I really don't want to do that, so I guess I'm just gonna cut it here. So when I cut this one off, the original one off, I kind of want to leave a little bit just so we can still salvage this unit if we need to. Alright, here we go. Strip this a little bit. Alright, here we go. Looks really nasty in my opinion, but it's the only way it's gonna work. So let's go ahead and tuck this guy back in there. Oh, I gotta heat up the heat shrink. I know I probably should have put heat shrink here, but I think that's pretty well covered from making contact from anywhere in there, so I'm pretty confident that's not going to short anything out. I was, however, kind of concerned about the condition of the wires here, so that's why I wanted to cover it up with heat shrink here, so that's why I did that. I think all this does is just lock the ignition switch in place, I think. I haven't tried taking it out. I think the contact point on this opposite end right here looks kind of suspect already, so the more I fiddle with it, the more it's just going to want to start to fall apart. So I'm just going to leave that as is and put this back in. Column is back in place. I do have to tighten this one up to prevent this from kind of moving around. The next one up is this little piece of metal that goes inside. Now the spring. Then this just gonna pop this in, but before I do, I gotta remember to put this spring in. This one's gonna be kind of tricky because not only do you have to keep these attached on this end here, you have to make sure this spring, there's two plates. One plate goes here and one plate goes here. So that's what keeps it from going left and right. And then this will have it so that it stays on that left or right. And then these are connections here. So there's a few things that are kind of involved in putting this together. Yeah, the tricky part is the spring up here. It's just gonna take a bit of time. There we go. See how it goes left and it goes right? That's what we want. It stays left, goes to the middle, and it stays right. So now that's in. Next thing is going to be this lock ring. There we go. That's in. I got everything all neatly tucked away. Down here, I screwed these in, making sure this one was grounding. I put the dimmer relay up there, tucked all the wiring. In the back, there's two terminals only, and it's S and K. The one with the letter K, it goes over to the 9-pin relay. You would think the S on here would connect to the S here, but it really is the K that connects to the S here, and then the S goes somewhere else, I forget. But yeah, it's just something to note because I tried it backwards and wasn't working, so I had to put it back the way it was and then it worked. I do want to run a push button to start switch on here because this ignition, it's really weird because it works when you turn the key, but then when you let go of it, it keeps wanting to crank the starter motor. So I basically just disabled this ignition to the starter motor, connected the one terminal or one end of it to the switch, and then the other one is just going to get hot wired over to the battery terminal. The previous owner had drilled a hole here because again this wasn't working for them, so they put a separate ignition switch here, which is kind of weird. So I had a separate key on it and I didn't want that, so I'm gonna go with a button. It's now the next day. I took a little break yesterday. It was getting, well, for one, it was getting a little bit late, and two, I was having a little bit of trouble putting the steering wheel in, because as I was putting it in, it was pretty much bottoming out at that little circlip that I have right there above the spring. What happened is I bolted the column down onto here first, so this was pushed down a little bit too far, and see how this is like way up here, because the bottom of the steering wheel, this area right here, I believe is supposed to bottom out right here. So basically when I had the steering wheel in, there was a huge gap right here. I'm gonna pull this out just a little bit, enough for this to kind of be like kind of flush here, so that I can mount the steering wheel all the way in, and then once that's in, then I can bolt this in here, so that way everything's all aligned. Okay, I've got the steering wheel installed. So what I ended up doing was mounting the steering wheel, like I said, over here, and as I was bolting these two in, I was pulling this as close towards me as possible while I was bolting these in. There's still a tiny bit of a gap. I don't remember that being there, but I mean, it's working fine, so I'm just gonna leave it. So the last thing I have to put back on is the horn ring, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I've got the steering wheel all done. I gotta have the horn ring put in too. For some reason the horn wasn't grounding out. What I did is I took that contact plate out and I started sanding the inside and the outside. Actually, I have a spare horn ring here. This piece right here is the contact plate. I sanded down this entire surface here along with the other side right here too. Now I got that in, and there we go. It seems to work fine now, so the last thing I have to do is put these on, or I guess one of them. And there we go.